In 2023, the greatest footballer of his generation turned down the biggest salary offer in the history of sports, to earn less money in Miami. Except he didn't. He earned something better than money. He earned ownership. And the contract he signed quietly rewrote how superstar athletes get paid. Rewind to the choice. Coming out of his World Cup triumph, Messi had 3 doors. Door 1, Saudi Arabia, a reported package north of $1 billion to headline their league. Door 2, a romantic return to Barcelona. Door 3, Major League Soccer, a league whose entire payroll, across every team, was less than his Saudi offer. He picked Door 3. The football world called it retirement. The business world understood immediately, because the Miami deal wasn't a salary, it was a capital structure. The reported architecture had layers no athlete contract had combined before. Layer 1, the base. Guaranteed compensation reported in the range of $50 to $60 million a year. Enormous for MLS, modest next to the alternatives. That's the layer everyone saw. It was the decoy. Layer 2, revenue participation. Messi's camp reportedly negotiated shares tied to the league's streaming partnership and to merchandise sales, meaning when new subscribers signed up to watch him and when his shirts flew off shelves, a piece reportedly flowed back to him. Think about what that means. Messi wasn't being paid for playing. He was being paid like a shareholder in the attention he generated. Every camera pointed at him became a royalty stream. Layer 3, the masterstroke, an equity pathway. The deal reportedly included an option for Messi to take an ownership stake in the club itself after playing. Not a testimonial. Not an ambassador role. Equity. The asset he was appreciating. The club, whose valuation multiplied after his arrival, he would get to own a slice of. He wasn't the product being sold. He was an investor whose deposit was himself. Zoom out, and the shape of it becomes almost elegant. Most athlete contracts are structured to pay someone for output they've already delivered by the time the check clears. A game played, a season finished, a jersey sold. This one was structured to pay Messi for output that hadn't happened yet. Subscriptions that would sign up because of him, jerseys that would sell because of him, a valuation that would climb because of him. It converted a 40-year-old sport's oldest currency, reputation, into something closer to a financial instrument. That's not a contract clause, that's a bet on a person, sized like a bet on a company. Now measure what he actually created. Inter Miami went from an average MLS franchise to one of the most valuable clubs in the hemisphere. Valuation estimates multiplied within a couple of seasons. Season tickets sold out league-wide wherever he traveled. Opposing teams moved his away games to NFL stadiums. Shirt sales broke league records. League-wide streaming subscriptions surged. The league literally engineered new competitions and rules around his presence. Economists gave it a name, the Messi effect, a measurable repricing of an entire American sports league caused by one signing. Let's sit inside that repricing for a second, because it's the part most breakdowns skip. A league's value isn't just the sum of its franchises, it's the sum of its future TV deals, its sponsorship leverage, its ability to expand into new cities and charge expansion fees for the privilege. Every one of those numbers moved the moment Messi put pen to paper. Expansion fees for new MLS franchises, which had been climbing steadily for years, jumped again post-Messi, because now buying into MLS meant buying into a league that had proven it could produce global attention on command. Broadcast partners who had treated MLS as a rounding error suddenly had a reason to renegotiate. That's not a player boosting a team, that's a player re-rating an entire asset class. And here's the part that makes this a business story rather than a football story. The structure was only possible because he took it in America. European clubs couldn't legally hand a player equity and league revenue shares like this. Financial fair play rules, ownership structures, and decades of precedent make it almost impossible to hand a single employee a slice of a private club's future value on top of wages. MLS, a single entity league that operates more like a corporation with franchises, could build him a package that looked less like a football contract and more like a founder joining a startup. Below market cash, meaningful upside, ownership at exit. Messi didn't move to a smaller league. He moved to a better cap table. It's worth pausing on why single entity structure mattered so much. In MLS, The league itself owns the players' contracts, not the individual clubs. That sounds like a bureaucratic detail, but it's actually the hidden mechanism that made the whole deal legally possible. Because the league, not just Inter Miami, controls the commercial rights tied to broadcasting and league-wide sponsorships. The league itself could cut Messi into revenue streams that no single European club would ever have the authority to offer. Adidas, Apple, and MLS all had to coordinate to make the streaming and apparel components work. That's 3 separate corporations restructuring their own deals around the gravitational pull of one player. Nobody does that for an aging star, unless the math already says yes. Compare that to how a normal marquee signing usually works. A club overpays for a star, hopes attendance ticks up, and treats any brand lift as a bonus nobody bothered to model. Miami inverted the order of operations entirely. The brand lift was the model, and the salary was almost an afterthought bolted on to satisfy MLS's own roster rules. That inversion is the actual innovation here, more than any single dollar figure. It's the difference between hiring a great employee and recruiting a founder. One gets paid to show up, the other gets paid to build something that keeps paying out after they've clocked off. The blueprint is already spreading. Superstars across sports now arrive at negotiations asking for the Miami structure: equity options, revenue participation, business ecosystems around the playing deal. Agents who once negotiated purely on salary numbers are now building pitch decks that look like private equity term sheets, vesting schedules, exit multiples, brand co-development clauses. The next generation of athletes watched the greatest player alive choose ownership over wages, and learned the lesson every wealthy person eventually learns: salaries make you rich, equity makes you wealthy. Consider the ripple effects beyond Miami itself. Other MLS owners, watching one club's valuation multiply almost overnight, started asking their own front offices the same question: what would it take to engineer our own version of this, even at a smaller scale? Suddenly, mid-tier free agents in MLS found themselves with more negotiating leverage than they'd had in years, because ownership groups had just watched proof of concept that a single marquee signing could reprice a franchise. It wasn't just Messi who got paid. Every negotiation happening in that league's shadow got recalibrated too. There's a broader lesson here for anyone who isn't a footballer at all. The Messi deal is really a case study in how leverage gets created, not by asking for more money, but by identifying which side of a negotiation is capital-rich and attention-poor. MLS had stadiums, broadcast infrastructure, and ambition, but not the one thing that makes all of it worth anything: eyeballs. Messi had the eyeballs. Whoever controls the scarce input in a negotiation gets to set the terms, and in this case, attention was the scarce input, not cash. Saudi Arabia had more cash than anyone alive. It still couldn't buy the one asset MLS could offer instead: a legal structure that let attention convert directly into ownership. So who won the deal? Messi got hundreds of millions plus upside plus a club. Miami got a valuation multiple that turned an unremarkable expansion franchise into one of the most talked about properties in world sports. The league got the relevance it had chased for 30 years, the broadcast leverage it had never had, and a template for luring the next global superstar without needing Saudi-sized cash reserves. Adidas and Apple got a case study in what happens when a distribution deal and an athlete's personal brand are stitched together instead of negotiated separately. And Saudi Arabia, which offered more money than anyone, got a lesson in the one thing money can't always buy: the smartest guy in the room reading the whole board. Because that's the real twist underneath all of this. Saudi Arabia's offer assumed the negotiation was about compensation. Miami's offer assumed the negotiation was about capital. Those are different games, and only one side realized it. $1 billion in guaranteed cash is a number that gets spent. An equity stake in an appreciating asset, tied to a revenue share that grows every year subscriptions climb, is a number that compounds. Messi didn't pick the bigger number. He picked the number that could grow without him doing anything else. The richest contract in history was the one that looked smaller. That's the Miami deal. Saudi football didn't take that rejection lying down. They went and bought half the sport instead. Is their spending genius or the biggest bubble in sports history? That's the next video. Subscribe.